There are lots of really cool lunchboxes out there featuring wildly popular TV shows and movies. And this video is not about any of those. We're going to take a look at the vintage metal lunchboxes that make you say, what were they thinking? Now on Collector Guys.
Collector Guys.
So here we are in the Collector Guys Texas studio, or as my wife likes to call it, the kitchen. And, just so you know, while we're making this video, there's a pot roast in the oven. Before we get going, please hit that subscribe button, hit the bell, give us a thumbs up, and please leave a comment. For parts of 4 decades, metal lunchboxes were, for the most part, a perfect reflection of the pop culture of the time. But over that time, there were, in my opinion, some missteps. So I went through my collection of almost 300 lunchboxes and pulled out the ones that I think are a little different. But let's be clear, this by no means I don't like some of these misfit boxes. Oh no, it's quite the opposite. Some of these I actually love because they're so different. So let's take a look at some of the most strange, bizarre, unique, ugly, and maybe boring vintage metal lunchboxes of all time. Starting with the exciting world of Metric's 1976 Thermos. One of my all-time favorites. In 1975, Congress passed the Metric Conversion Act, which declared the metric system the new preferred form of measurement. Now, almost 50 years later, it's pretty obvious that that didn't happen. There is so much to love about this box because if you grew up in the 70s, you remember in school how they always talked about making this conversion. And if you look at it, there's a lot of great things going on here. You know, on the front, you've got power generators. Power will be measured in kilowatts, megawatts, how the metric system would change the Olympics, motorcycle and racing car engines. The bottle for it has a decimal measuring system, and the 8 ounces is equals 0.236 liters. And then on the back here, you've got how it would affect temperature, Celsius versus Fahrenheit, all this great stuff, examples, and on the very, very top here, there's actually a conversion of inches to centimeters on the top. So you could actually take this to school and cheat on a test maybe if you had it during that time. But I just sit there and look at this box and I just keep thinking that somewhere there was a bunch of guys in suits sitting in a boardroom and one goes, how are we going to get this information out to the kids? How are we going to get them to buy in? And then one of them raises their hand and says, let's put it on a lunchbox. And they did. Ronald McDonald, the Sheriff of Cactus Canyon, 1983, Aladdin. If you watched cartoons in the 70s and 80s, Ronald McDonald was as big a part of your Saturday mornings as the TV shows his commercials appeared in. This box features almost the entire McDonald Land gang. I don't see Officer Big Mac, but then again, if Ronald is the sheriff, why would you need him? Ronald McDonald's Sheriff of Cactus Canyon. And through my research, this is the only time I think he ever was really hanging out in Cactus Canyon or was Sheriff of Cactus Canyon. There was no references in any of the commercials or that, but I'm guessing McDonald's being as popular as they were just trying to get a lunchbox in kids' hands. It's random, but this is a must-have for McDonald's collectors. On a side note, I found out from the great book Lunchbox Inside and Out by Jack Mingo and Aaron Barrett that Sid and Marty Krofft actually sued McDonald's for copyright infringement, claiming the McDonald Land characters were based on their H.R. Pufnstuf characters. Mayor McCheese and the gang were indeed designed by former Sid and Marty Krofft employees. The Kroffts won this lawsuit, and when you look at the characters on these 2 lunch kits side by side, you can see the similarities. Jonathan Livingston Seagull, 1974, Aladdin. Written by Richard Bach and first published in 1970, this was a very popular book. By 1972, it had over 1 million copies in print. To quote Wikipedia, it is about a philosophical gull who is trying to learn about flying, personal reflection, freedom, and self-realization. Jonathan Livingston Seagull was required reading in the high school I went to, but I didn't read it. This is the only box in my collection that is solely based on a book, which alone makes it kind of strange. Not to mention that books on self-reflection were really not a hot topic with the elementary school crowd who used these. This quirky box is one of my favorites also. And the good thing about something like this that was really not that popular is that they made them, not a whole lot of people bought them, and thus they're harder to find. So I'm really happy to have this as part of my collection. Apple's Way 1975 Thermos. Apple's Way was a CBS primetime show that only aired from February 1974 to January 1975, a total of only 28 episodes, which is just barely over one season, which is why it's on this list. It's a wholesome box about a wholesome show that most people never saw in the first place, let alone deserving of its own lunch kit. Lunchboxes like Apple's Way that are for shows that were really short-lived is not uncommon. In fact, I can think of two more off the top of my head. There is Cowboy in Africa with Chuck Connors, that only ran for one season. And then there's the Double Deckers, which was a British kids show that ABC ran for only 17 episodes. So this is really not uncommon. Makes you wonder between the marketing plan, the actual production of the box, shipping it and getting it to the stores, that it even got out there before the show was canceled. But like before, unpopular show, not many were bought, makes them rarer, harder to find, glad to have it in my collection. Back in 1975 Aladdin. If you were around in 1976, you remember that year was all about the country's bicentennial. In fact, I still have my KISS 1976 bicentennial poster hanging in my office. This lunchbox was part of the patriotic fever going on at the time. I personally find the artwork on this lunchbox puzzling and a little disturbing. First, there are 4 kinds of characters on here. 1, kids who look like real kids. 2, adults who look like real adults. 3, kids who look like cartoon kids. And 4, adults who look like cartoon kids. And there's something off about this. George Washington having his boot, with a hole in it mind you, shined by this young boy. Take a look. And just tell me, is it just me? Dolph Briscoe Dome 1976. Do you know who Dolph Briscoe is? He was governor of Texas in the 1970s. If you didn't know that, don't feel bad. I didn't know who he was either, and I live in Texas. This was a promotional giveaway during his 1976 campaign, when his slogan was, here in my best Texan, "Get the work done in a workmanlike manner." I just bought this, and it was fun to find out that it still had the little flyer that came with it inside. Disco Fever 1979 Thermos. Disco was insanely popular in the 70s, so to have a lunchbox created for it made a lot of sense. And this kit has all the sparkle and flash of that era. There's just one big problem. Disco peaked in 1977 and 78. This kit came out in 1980. So by the time this box got on the market, disco had died. Kind of like what happened with my senior yearbook. Yep, that really happened. This is my high school yearbook from my senior year, 1979, the year of the disco, which seemed like a good idea when they started making this book in September of 1978. Not so much in May of 1979 when we graduated. Betsy Clark or Hallmark Kids, 1975 Thermos. Yeah, I know, Betsy Clark's artwork was really popular in the 70s. Hallmark had everything from cards to figurines of her pictures of kids doing everyday activities. This is one of the more uneventful pieces in my collection. So why do I have it? I'm a collector. You don't win till you have them all. A surprisingly benign box for Thermos. Feels more like an Ohio art box. Speaking of, it's now time for our Ohio art section of this video. Ohio Art, whose business model was, we would rather go generic than spend money on licensing. Sports Squirts 1972 Ohio Art. I find the artwork on this lunch kit, very creepy. They made 7 different boxes with these. Just look at the characters here. You've got Jimmy Blooper, Frankie Fumble, Freddy Face Off, and I'll give him credit on this name because this name is actually kind of clever. Woody Score. They kind of remind me of a certain South Park character. My Lunch 1977 Ohio Art. A lunchbox that literally says, "This is my lunchbox." This is an incredibly boring lunchbox. Paramedic. Who knows when this came out? Ohio Art. The controversial Paramedic kit. Is it a lunchbox or is it a toy? This is actually super cool. Some of the books about vintage lunchboxes have this listed in it, but is it really? You open it up and it has all this crazy stuff inside. So whether this is a toy or a lunchbox, it really doesn't matter because it is really cool. As you can look on this side, it's got double doors on it. And here we have stethoscope, we've got blood pressure, we've got a defibrillator on this side, little pads and knobs and that. And then on this other side, this opens up and you've got an emergency phone, a monitor, and a doctor's checklist. Just a whole lot of really cool parts to this. Really no room for your food unless you pull all of this out. Thankfully, whoever had this did not use it for a lunch kit. Toy or lunchbox, who cares? It's really cool, and I'm also really happy to have this in my collection. There have been many other unique but not so exciting trends over the years, such as a number of boring fake fabric or tooled leather boxes. And a 3 different versions of a red barn. Why some of these were made, who knows? We can only enjoy them and scratch our head. Well, the pot roast is about done, and so are we. Thank you very much for watching. Please hit that subscribe button, and always remember, surround yourself with what you love.